certainly been bitter enemies for decades, but the crisis unfolding right now in Iraq could bring them a bit together. Will the United States and Iran team up to stop Islamic militants from seizing Baghdad, taking total control of Iraq? Our foreign affairs reporter Elise Labott is working this part of the story. She's here with me in the Situation Room. Elise, what are you finding out?
Well, Wolf, there are U.S. and Iranian officials in Vienna this week holding talks on Iran's nuclear issue. We're told that those talks between Iran and the U.S. on Iraq could be on the margins of that because the U.S. is coming around to the realization that the road to Baghdad could go through Tehran.
With Islamist forces advancing on Baghdad, will President Obama team up with Iran, America's sworn enemy for 35 years, to stop them? Secretary of State John Kerry told Yahoo it's an idea the U.S. is ready to explore.
We're open to discussions if there's something constructive that can be contributed by Iran, if Iran is prepared to do something that is going to respect the integrity and sovereignty of Iraq.
In about-face from last year, when Kerry, in Baghdad, blamed Iran for fueling the civil war in Syria and accused Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki of turning a blind eye as Iran flew in weapons over Iraqi skies.
Anything that supports President Assad is problematic. And I made it very clear to the Prime Minister that the overflights from Iran are in fact helping to sustain President Assad and his regime.
Since U.S. troops left Iraq in 2011, the Shiite regime in Iran has cemented its influence with Prime Minister al-Maliki, also a Shia. Now, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has offered help in beating back ISIS militants. Last week, a top Iranian commander traveled to Baghdad to advise the government. And Iran denies it, but a security official in Baghdad tells CNN Tehran has deployed 3 Revolutionary Guard units to Iraq. Which is why even a conservative senator who once advocated striking Iran told CNN Washington needs Tehran's help.
Why did we deal with Stalin? Because he was not as bad as Hitler. The Iranians can provide some assets to make sure Baghdad doesn't fall.
A growing chorus of experts agree, including a former deputy national security advisor during the Iraq War.
There is a political solution here that I think could be both in Iran's interest and the U.S. interest.
And a retired general who served in Iraq.
There are necessary steps that we have to take with Tehran that we've probably never taken before and would prefer not to take.
And says the U.S. and Iran should develop a set of shared objectives and rules of the road.
And Wolf, there are some risks here. The U.S. is concerned that if there appear to be teaming up with Iran, that could alienate Sunnis in Iraq, the U.S. Sunni allies in the Gulf, and they also don't want to jeopardize these nuclear negotiations ahead of that July 20th deadline. It's coming up, so they really have to tread carefully. At
least stand by for a moment. We want to bring in the State Department Deputy Spokeswoman Marie Harf. She's in Vienna, Austria right now for those U.S.-Iranian talks on Iran's nuclear program. Marie, we're going to have some questions from Elise and from Jim Sciutto, who's with me as well. But what do you say? Will there be direct talks between the U.S. and Iran in Vienna this week, where you are, on the situation in Iraq?
Well, Wolf, happy to be here tonight from a late night in Vienna. We're talking to all of the regional players about Iraq, about the security situation there. And there were very brief discussions on the margins of the P5+1 today with Iran about Iraq. Again, very brief discussions there. But these talks are really focused on the nuclear issue. Going forward, we'll determine how, if we want to keep talking to Iran about Iraq, that might make the most sense. But we both have a shared an interest in ISIL not gaining a foothold anymore in Iraq, in fighting the shared security threat. And we will talk to all of the regional players, as we've done in the past, if you look at Afghanistan, about how we can all confront this threat together. But let me make one more point very clearly. No outside country can fix Iraq's problems. We need Iraq's leaders, its political leaders from across the spectrum, to step up and bring the country together to fight this threat.
Have you seen any evidence that Nouri al-Maliki, the Prime Minister of Iraq, is doing that?
Well, I think Iraq's leaders recognize the severity of the situation. I think they see the exact same things your viewers are seeing about what's going on the ground there. And that's why we've been clear that we will assist them in this fight. As you know, the president is considering a number of options right now to do so. But none of those options, including military options, will work if there is not a sincere and serious effort by all of Iraq's leaders, including Prime Minister Maliki, to bring the country together, to govern in an inclusive way, and to stop the sectarian fighting.
All right, Elise, go ahead.
Marie, let me just follow up on that point. You've been pretty clear with the Prime Minister for about a year now, especially when he visited Washington late last year, about the need to take those steps, and he hasn't done so. You're still considering aid. Is there at any point that you are willing to condition some of this aid on him taking these genuine steps at political reconciliation, such as releasing political prisoners, dropping charges against his opponents, the kind of things that really could bring the country together?
Well, I think you heard the president speak very clearly on Friday that in order for us to ramp up and continue our assistance, the government of Iraq, again, the prime minister and others, need to take concrete steps to bring their country together, to invest in their security forces, to do so in an inclusive manner, to reach out to Sunni leaders and Sunni parties and the Sunni people, because so much of what we've seen today is a result of the fact that there have been these sectarian divides that have not been addressed in the right way over the past few years. So I think the president made clear that in order for us to do certain things, the Iraqis need to step up and do certain things as well.
Marie, it's Jim. I'm just curious why the degree of surprise. As we reported last week, there were multiple intelligence reports over the last year describing ISIS's intentions and planning for taking territory in Iraq as far as targeting Baghdad. Why is the president just developing military, and his team just developing military options to respond to something like that now? In particular, why just the push and the urgency now to pressure Maliki to include Sunnis and Kurds in his government when this has been a long-term problem? We've been aware of the way he's turned off these groups and excluded them. Why now? Why wasn't there better preparation and earlier pressure?
Well, Jim, I think that we've been very clear about the threat that ISIL represents to Iraq for a very long time. It was a key topic of Prime Minister Maliki's last trip to Washington in the fall. We've been consistently increasing our support to the government of Iraq to fight this threat. We've continued with weapons and assistance and surveillance and other things as well. And we've also consistently pushed Prime Minister Maliki to govern in a more inclusive way. None of these are new issues. But I do think we've been very honest that we have seen over the past now, I think, 10 days or so, an increase in the severity of the situation, in the threat. We have been disappointed, quite frankly, by how the security forces in Iraq responded to this ISIL offensive, which is why the president right now is looking at additional options, ramping up our assistance, and seeing what else we could do to give the Iraqi government some space for the security forces to regroup, to make the right decisions they need to make to bring the country back together. And again, none of this will work if the Iraqi leaders aren't willing to step up to the plate.
We'll see if they do step up to the plate. Marie Harf joining us from Vienna, where U.S.-Iranian talks on nuclear issues, and as she just said, also on Iraq, have been taking place. Marie Harf, thanks very much.